Boy, oh boy, the Supreme Court came out with a ruling that we like, a real ruling in favor of Trump, the Constitution, and the power of the presidency. All right, we got a lot to cover. My name's Brian Craig. You are listening to the Brian Craig Show podcast. Make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us on. All right, so the Supreme Court has ruled that President Trump can actually deport people that are in the country illegally. And in this instance, 350,000 Venezuelans that were given protection by Joe Biden. And, you know, this is an amazing thing because the left, the never-Trumpers, the Democrats, you know, all the usual suspects, they had the highest respect for all the federal courts, including the Supreme Court, when they were coming down with rulings against President Trump. So how are they going to react now that the Supreme Court says, yeah, the country has been invaded, there's tens of millions of people here, and the President of the United States actually has the authority to deport all these illegals that have invaded our country? It blows my mind that people somehow have gotten it in their head that the chief executive of the United States executive branch, the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States, answers to a bunch of unelected judges. I've never heard this before. Now, maybe this is just some convenience that they've had with a couple of these corrupt federal judges going outside the scope of their authority and trying to run the president. I don't know. Or maybe they just don't teach social studies and government properly in our school system and our colleges anymore, which I'm sure they're not. But now the Supreme Court has ruled in favor of Trump. Let's go into this. This is a great story. The Supreme Court of the United States handed Donald Trump a major immigration win as he seeks to speed up the mass deportations amid a scathing back and forth between the president and the high court and a bunch of these lower liberal judges too. The order will allow Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem to strip away temporary protection status from 350,000 Venezuelan migrants. Thousands of Venezuelan migrants have been living in the United States under the program, which helps citizens of countries stricken by war or natural disaster get temporary work. Well, that's like every country in the world. I mean, you know, we had a hurricane hit here in Florida. So does that mean I can get refugee status in any country I want in the world and set up a new life for my family? Come on. Their temporary protected status was extended under Biden. I'm reading from the Daily Mail, this part here. Their temporary protected status was extended under the Biden administration amid chaos under the Maduro regime, but it was terminated by Kristi Noem, the great Kristi Noem. She's doing a great job, right? I mean, she really was. If it wasn't for that puppy thing, she might be the vice president today. But I think she's better in this job, don't you? She's doing a great job. In February, Kristi Noem ordered the status extended to Venezuelans to be removed, arguing that their presence in the United States is contrary to the national interest. And that is so true. However, a judge in California blocked Kristi Noem's action, calling it predicated on negative stereotypes and unconstitutional. You know, this thing with the federal judges, okay? Federal judges are often referred to, well, not often, but sometimes referred to as federal district judges. And they have these districts that they oversee. Their authority was never intended, not only their authority never intended to be over the president of the United States, their authority was never intended to cover areas outside of their district. They were supposed to handle issues inside their district, not the whole country. They're not Supreme Court justices. They're not a Congress, these local federal judges. But they've taken, we've always heard about activist judges all our lives. These are activist judges on steroids. Liberal Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, who was appointed by Biden, was the only justice against the order giving the green light to deport the migrants. Now, Ketanji. What kind of name is Ketanji for a Supreme Court justice? Sounds like a stripper name, doesn't it? Ketanji. Trump has pledged to deport record numbers of illegal migrants in the United States, sparking months of back and forth legal drama, making its way all the way to the Supreme Court. Trump was slapped down by the Supreme Court in another case on Friday, blocking the use of the Alien Enemies Act to deport migrants held in a detention center in Texas. That one is no big deal. That's just a handful of illegal Venezuelans, and they will be deported. The press aren't reporting that one properly. The Supreme Court said they need to have a little more, they need to be given time to mount a defense against the deportation. So that lower court will give them a month, a week, 2 weeks, however long, and then they'll get deported. So that's being misreported to give a false impression of what Trump is up against and what's going on. Trump blasted that ruling on his Truth Social site over the weekend, calling it a bad and dangerous day for America in his latest clash with the federal courts. President Trump said the decision will let more criminals pour into our country, doing great harm to our cherished American public. There's no doubt about it. Kristi Noem is awesome. A few weeks back, Megyn Kelly was going after Kristi Noem pretty hardcore. I didn't care for that at all. She seemed a little catty with Kristi Noem, almost jealous of Kristi Noem. I think Kristi Noem is doing an incredible job. Her and Tom Homan, oh man, and that's why I was talking on the last podcast and on the morning show today. By the way, if you're tuned in, this is, of course, where MAGA comes to talk. My name's Brian. Thanks for joining us. And don't forget, the Brian Craig Show podcast is on all podcast platforms. If there's a podcast platform, the Brian Craig Show podcast is on it, and you can binge the shows there. And if you tune in on YouTube or YouTube Music, you get the video version where you can see me and see the articles and things that I'm talking about. If that's on YouTube and regular YouTube and YouTube Music, which I just started the video podcast version of the podcast yesterday. This is only the second video podcast episode. But anyway, Kristi Noem, she is doing an incredible job leading these raids. She's teamed up with Tom Homan. And what I was talking about on yesterday's podcast, as well as the morning show today, was Comey being let go. Right now, that was a Secret Service call. Secret Service is under Homeland Security. So you really think Kristi Noem let Comey go? No. Something's going on there. They have him under surveillance, Comey. One caller towards the end of the show this morning made a good point. Says maybe there's another investigation they're doing, and they want him out there for that. There's something. Kristi Noem is hardcore MAGA. She is 100% MAGA, 110% MAGA. Kristi Noem, and Secret Service is under her. She didn't let Comey get away with what he did. I promise you. There's more in play. All right. Anyway, back to this article. In January, days before Trump returned to office, the Biden administration announced an extension of this program. Yeah, because they were trying to stick it to him. Kristi Noem, a Trump appointee, rescinded the extension and moved to end the designation for a subset of Venezuelans who benefited from it. Homeland Security said about 348,202 Venezuelans were registered under the 2023 designation. I mean, come on. You know what's amazing to me about this is that there's anyone left in Venezuela. Venezuela must, it must be like an empty country. They must not have any traffic. The streets must be empty because it's almost like they've transported the whole country to the United States. Kristi Noem is accused of violating a federal law that governs the actions of agencies. The judge in California that struck down her move also said the revocation of the status appeared to have been predicated on negative stereotypes by insinuating the Venezuelan migrants were criminals. Well, all illegal migrants are criminals because they're here illegally, okay? And many of them are violent criminals. The judge added that the Venezuelans were more likely to hold bachelor's degrees than American citizens. Are those bachelor degrees from U.S. institutions or South? Yeah. It doesn't. I don't care what degree they have because they have a college degree. Let me tell you, some of the dumbest people I've known in my life have had advanced college degrees, and some of the smartest people I've had the pleasure of knowing have high school diplomas, some even less. It's amazing. Some of the brilliant people I've met that have less than zero education because they're out there living life and learning stuff, But this judge that says they're more likely to hold bachelor's degrees than American citizens, what does that even mean? And if it's a bachelor's degree from Venezuela, what good is that here? How many times have we heard stories? I'm in Florida, and in Miami, I've heard so many stories over the years of people with advanced degrees, sometimes medical doctors with specialties from Cuba. They come here and they're working at hotels as busboys. What does the equivalent of a Venezuelan bachelor's degree mean here? And why do we want them here? If it's such a great degree, why do we want them here taking jobs from college-educated Americans or legal immigrants? It's very bizarre. Let me see here. I lost my place. Okay, yeah, this liberal judge said that the Venezuelan illegals are more likely to hold bachelor's degrees than American citizens and less likely to commit crimes than the general U.S. population. Well, even if that part's true, which I don't accept, but even if it were true, they're less likely to commit crime. What does that mean, right? I mean, they shouldn't be here anyway. Just because they have a college degree and are less likely to commit crime, which is, I don't accept that, but let's just, for the argument, what does that mean? They can come here? It's ridiculous. The San Francisco-based 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals on April 18th declined the administration's request to pause the judge's order. Justice Department lawyers in the Supreme Court filing said Chen had wrestled control of the nation's immigration, that's the judge, of the nation's immigration policy away from the government's executive branch headed by Trump. That's true. The president is not supervised by judges. Judges are not a committee of presidents. When in the past do you know of judges bossing presidents around? And I often ask people these kind of questions like this. What if the president orders a military strike against Iran, for example, and it comes out in advance? Can some federal district judge out in California or make a ruling forbidding the president from using military action against Iran? I don't think so. But by this new standard that liberals have given so far as the authority of federal judges, they could. We're in crazy town with these people. Let's see here. The Supreme Court's order, contravenes fundamental executive branch prerogatives and indefinitely delays since the deposit, a lot of legalese, I don't need to read that. The plaintiffs told the Supreme Court that granting the administration's request would strip work authorization from nearly 350,000 people living in the United States. Absolutely. How many people out there would like a job? If these 350,000 people have jobs, even half of them or even a quarter of them, we're talking tens of thousands, really, by this article, hundreds of thousands of jobs that they're illegally taking, that Americans or legal immigrants or legal visa holders should be taking. But come on. The plaintiffs also said it would expose them, the illegals, to deportation to an unsafe country and cause billions in economic losses nationwide. I don't know how it would cause billions of economic losses. It would, it would save us a lot of money. I'm sorry that Venezuela is unsafe. The thing about Latin America, in particular South America, not so much Central, but Latin America, they have the same resources and everything that we have in North America. Well, it's not our fault that after all these many centuries of colonization from Europeans in both North and South America, that after 500 years or more, they're still third world countries, and North America, at least north of Mexico, because Mexico is part of North America, is the United States, Canada, and Mexico, or the United States, Mexico, and Canada. The United States is always first in that. And everything South America, south of Mexico, is either Central or South America. Why are those countries third world and the United States and Canada are first world, and when they have the same resources we have? And sometimes it's even more. Venezuela is an OPEC nation. Why? And it has something to do with the culture. I don't know. So you want to transport a culture that's not been able to have a civilized government for 500 years or more and transport them here by the millions to the United States? How does that benefit this country? How does that not bring us down? And yeah, exactly. It's crazy. The State Department currently warns against travel to Venezuela due to the high risk of wrongful detentions, terrorism, kidnapping, and arbitrary enforcement of local laws, crime, civil unrest, and poor health infrastructure. The Trump administration in April terminated thousands of Afghan and I don't know what you call people from Cameroon, Cameroonians in the United States. Those actions are not part of the current case. Well, here's the deal. President Trump's the president. This country is being invaded. Barack Obama deported millions of illegals in his 8 years, millions. And not one liberal stood up for their rights, okay? They all backed it and supported it. In the last election, President Trump won a larger percentage of the African-American vote than any Republican since Eisenhower. And the reason that is many lifelong liberal Democrat African-Americans voted for Trump because of the illegal immigration issue, and many African Americans were pretty fed up that illegals are coming over here and getting a free ride for themselves and their entire families, getting their housing paid for, getting an education for their children paid for. They don't have to buy food. They get money every month, Section 8 housing. And a lot of African Americans that are extremely hardcore liberal voted for Trump. Now, they might have voted Democrat down ballot, but they voted for Trump. And that crowd is the reparations crowd. People that believe African Americans are owed reparations, many of them voted for President Trump because they view the illegals as getting their reparations in many instances. So this is a major victory, and I'm so curious. I cannot wait for this to get processed over the next 24 hours by the liberals, by the left, who have been holding these federal courts and the Supreme Court up to these high stakes. Well, if the court rules, if the Supreme Court and federal judges rule, you got to go along with it. Here's a major ruling on Trump's number one issue, the deportations, and the Supreme Court has ruled that he can do it. For over 350,000 Venezuelans alone. There'll be others from other countries too that get put into that, deportation. Of course, this is great. We really have gotten our country back, and it's so refreshing to have an American president again. Right? You hear the Democrats even still today. When do they speak out about something they're doing for Americans or want to do for Americans? They're always talking about what they want to do for others. Now, I'll tell you what I want to do. I want to tell you about Dr. Appleton and his laser wave pain treatment. Oh, man, guys, you've heard me talk about Dr. Appleton for a while. He's been with us on the program for over 2.5 years, going on 3 years. Actually, you know what? It'll be 3 years in July or August. I'll have to check. Either July or August will be our 3rd anniversary with our relationship with Dr. Appleton. And he rid me of pain the first of 7, from my years of suffering from knee pain with his laser away pain treatment. My knee had been hurting me since I was about 20 years old, especially this time of year. We're in hurricane season in Florida, rainy season, and my knee would just hurt so much. I was almost in tears. I just wanted to lay down and go to sleep. And he's rid me of pain 6 times. On top of that, arthritis, injuries from falling off my skateboard and such. It's amazing. And I have met so many listeners who are now living a pain-free life because they took my advice, went and saw Dr. Appleton, and took advantage of his laser away pain treatment. It works on every type of pain I've ever heard of. Arthritis, bursitis, work injuries, sports injuries, strains and sprains, repetitive motion injuries, post-surgical swelling, neck and back injuries, knee conditions, tinnitus, sciatica, spinal stenosis, fibromyalgia, plantar fasciitis, rotary tears, herniated disc, acute pain, chronic pain, and the list goes on. Give him a call. Remember, with Dr. Appleton, appointments are not necessary and walk-ins are welcome, even on Saturdays. We have listeners that travel from all over America, literally by plane and train and car, to see Dr. Appleton. And what he does is amazing, and that is rid you of your pain. The consultation is free. With the laser away pain treatment, there's no shots, no injections, no downtime, no surgery. That's right. And Dr. Appleton performs all the treatments himself. If you have scans, if you have x-rays, bring them with you. Dr. Appleton will gladly look them over. You can find him online at AppletonChiro.com. That's AppletonChiro.com. Or give him a call, 954-973-0710. Make sure you tell him Brian Craig sent you, all right? 954-973-0710. All right, we're going to take our first break and be right back. Did you know that every year, 95% of criminal cases never see a jury? They're decided behind closed doors through plea bargains. But what happens when those negotiations go wrong? Author Philip Mosier takes you inside the seismic 2012 Supreme Court rulings, Missouri versus Fry and Lafler versus Cooper, that changed everything in the book Plea Bargains on Trial. Available on Amazon. For the first time, the court recognized the right to effective counsel during plea bargaining, exposing the hidden pressure points that shape justice in America today. Filled with sharp legal insight, real-world examples, as well as powerful historical context, Plea Bargains on Trial pulls back the curtain on a system built on speed, but often short on fairness. If you're drawn to the complexities of law, justice, and the fight for true representation, Plea Bargains on Trial is a book you can't afford to miss. Order your copy right now on Amazon and see the system in a whole new light. Plea Bargains on Trial from author Philip Mosier on Amazon. If you're in business, you know that first impressions are crucial. Your business deserves a website that stands out. With nearly 20 years of experience, ProWeaver is your trusted partner for professional custom design websites that are built to elevate your brand. ProWeaver doesn't use generic templates, just fully responsive, user-friendly custom websites that are tailored to you and the needs of your business. And the best part, ProWeaver delivers in just 3 to 5 days. That's lightning speed compared to competitors who take weeks. ProWeaver handles everything for you. Logo design to e-commerce solutions, SEO, and social media setup. They'll help you launch, grow, and dominate online, all at an affordable price. Don't wait. Get your custom website right now. Visit ProWeaver.com or call them directly toll-free 877-216-0852. 877-216-0852. ProWeaver.com. Affordable, dependable, fast. True warriors don't follow trends, they forge legacies. At TacticalVikingBrand.com, they believe warriors are built, not born. Tactical Viking was inspired by the ferocity of Norse legends and the precision of modern fighters. Tactical fighting is more than just a brand, it's a way of life. They create apparel for those just like you who live by strength, resilience, and honor. Every battle-worn design tells a story of warriors who refuse to surrender. When you wear Tactical Viking, you're not just wearing clothing, you're wearing a legacy. Everything is a tribute to the warriors who gave everything so we could carry the shield forward. The burial flag on our sleeve isn't just a symbol, it's a promise that we will never forget the sacrifices made before us. Join the Brotherhood, forge your legacy, stand strong, stay ready, no surrender. Visit TacticalVikingBrand.com right now and view the inventory. You will be impressed, and use the code TACTICAL10 to save 10% off your purchase. TacticalVikingBrand.com. Forge your legacy. Wear the warrior's spirit. Are you over 50 and want to feel stronger, look better, and live an active life like you did when you were younger? Then add Fit After 50 on Highway to Your Health to your podcast playlist. Fit After 50 gives you real-world advice from experts and everyday people just like you. Whether it's fitness, nutrition, or disease prevention, Fit After 50 host Keith and Rob bring you tips, strategies, and the motivation you need to take charge of your health. On Fit After 50, there's no gimmicks, no shortcuts, just science-backed actionable strategies and real talk to help you stay fit, feel good, and thrive at any age. Listen to Fit After 50 on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and iHeartRadio. Subscribe today and take your first step towards a healthier, stronger, and more energized life. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Brian Craig. Thanks for tuning in. All right, so I wanted to play this. This is an example that fits into what we were talking about. This is from the local news right here in Miami. Listen to this woman. This is crazy.
Don't feel well. This woman, who we will call Maria, says she did not want to use her real name, concerned she could be targeted. But she does want people to know her story.
No deseo ir para atrás.
She told us, I don't want to go back. She's the mother of 3 children who are American citizens. She asked us not to show them.
Okay, now she's, the beginning got cut off. She's in the country illegally, living here in Miami, and now she's facing deportation.
Maria arrived from Honduras in February of 2005. 2 months later, she had an order to leave the country after not appearing at a hearing, but she never left. I asked her why she did not go to the hearing.
Yo le dije al oficial, yo no tengo familia.
I told the immigration officer I don't have any family in this country or a specific place to stay. She told me she entered the U.S. through California.
Pero en ningún momento me llegaron ningún documento.
I never received any document and they did not know where I was going to be. This month she received this letter at her house in South Florida. She has been fined for more than $1.82 million.
It says...
Wow, okay. She's been fined over $1.82 million, I guess, for refusing the deportation order.
Fined for more than $1.82 million.
It says that the government could fine an individual, an undocumented individual, daily $500.
Michelle Sanchez is Maria's attorney. She showed us the document Maria received.
They're supposed to say on the date that she was advised, and this is blank because they never advised her of the penalties.
Oh, okay. It's America's fault that she's here. She wasn't advised of the penalty. She's been on the lam for 20 years, okay? And by the way, you notice she's got kids. The anchor babies aren't anchoring her here. Now, I guess they'll be considered U.S. citizens under the current situation, so they can stay. But they may be grown up with their own families at this point, after as long as she's been here. But I love how the lawyer, this isn't her fault that she's been here illegally for 20 years. It's the fault of the United States. Yeah, right.
Okay.
So that's going to be my argument.
The 1952 Act has historically rarely been enforced, but in February, the Trump administration announced it will penalize people living in the U.S. illegally under that act.
What she has is an order of removal in her absence.
Is that still accumulating even today?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
So
still
that figure
accumulating.
is increasing.
It could increase. For me, that is absolutely nuts.
Sanchez filed a motion to reopen her client's case last year under a policy of the Biden administration, giving ICE attorneys the discretion to reopen cases and lift removal orders. Have you ever been arrested?
Nunca.
Well, no one's been arrested until they've been caught. You know, if you're a criminal, you can be on the lam for years. I mean, look at some of these criminals you hear about sometimes, you know, that have been wanted living different. There was a guy not too long ago arrested here in Florida who killed someone like 30 years ago, and he was living under a fake name and everything. They just got him. Just because you haven't been arrested doesn't mean you are cleared of your crimes.
I asked her if she would voluntarily return to her home country.
Me dolería tanto dejar mis hijos.
It would be extremely painful to be separated from my children. This is their country. This is all they know. Please have mercy. I want to stay with them.
You know, and I'm going to tell you another thing here, too. She's been in this country for 20 years, and she doesn't speak a lick of English. You know, she's doing this interview in Miami, doesn't speak any English. And this is, you know, listen, all of us at some point in our lives are descendant of immigrants that came from somewhere else. You know, that's true. Some of my family came here hundreds of years ago from Europe. And then the most recent immigrants in my side of the family, not my, but on my side of the family, came here in the late 1800s from Greece. And actually, my great grandparents, I didn't know my great grandfather, but when I was really little, I did meet and vaguely remember my great grandmother from Greece. But my grandmother, who passed away back in 1989, she was Greek. And the family, because her father was from Greece, they were Greek, and they had a Greek restaurant. But my grandmother and her sister, she had two sisters and a brother, none of them spoke a single word of Greek, even though both of their parents, my great-grandparents, were immigrants from Greece, and they had a Greek restaurant in Columbus, Ohio, which is where I'm from originally. And I remember talking to my grandma one day. I said, "Grandma, why don't you speak Greek?" And it came up. I was a little kid. And she had a Bible that was her father's that was in Greek. And she couldn't read it or anything. And I said, "Well, Grandma, why don't you speak Greek?" And she says, "Because my dad wanted us to be Americans, not Greek." And she knew some cuss words because her dad, I guess, when he'd get ticked off, he'd throw out some swear words in Greek. But that's it. And that's the way it used to be. And here you have a lady who's been here illegally on the lam for 20 years, and she doesn't speak any English. She hasn't assimilated. You know, when I was growing up, they used to remember, you guys remember your Schoolhouse Rock, the Great American Melting Pot. They stopped teaching that 25, 30 years ago. And these new waves of immigrants, particularly the illegals, they don't assimilate into American culture. Some do. I mean, like Elon Musk is a great example of an American. I mean, that's a naturalized U.S. citizen that's been completely assimilated. And that's awesome. My wife, Kathy, her mother is an immigrant from Canada. She's been a citizen since the 70s. She's an American citizen, totally assimilated. You know, Canada's a little easier than South Africa. But this is not assimilation, and she's got to go back. I'm sorry. You know. Here's the thing. You know, a lot of people think, well, you know, you MAGA people, you just don't like, you hate people from it. No. Elon Musk is loved by MAGA people. Everyone knows he's an immigrant. Melania, the First Lady of the United States, she is a naturalized U.S. citizen. She was a legal immigrant to the United States. All of President Trump's children, except for Tiffany, because Tiffany's mother was President Trump's American wife, Marla Maples, but President Trump's other two wives, both naturalized U.S. citizens. All of Trump's children, other than Tiffany, are born from a mother that's a legal U.S. immigrant, naturalized U.S. citizen, right? You know, Ivana and Melania, you know, we have no problem with immigrants, but you got to be legal. And the other thing that upsets people, for very good reason, by the way, is that these illegals are over here and getting set up in a life, which we all know. I'm not going to go through it all because we've talked about it endlessly. But a story like that, I mean, you feel bad for the woman. She's going to go back to where she's from. They're going to deport her. But, you know, you're not going to get a lot of teary-eyed people in this country about her. People, you know, the thing about the United States, and those of you that are in other countries, Americans are hard-working people. Hard-working people, you know, they just are. And we're overburdened with taxation, and Americans work very hard for everything that they have. And they just don't like the idea that people come here from other countries and they don't have to work for anything, and they get completely set up. In fact, in 2008, remember the housing crisis in 2008? You know, pretty bad for a lot of people. Luckily, I bought my house a couple years before that, so it wasn't a problem with me. But if you remember, that was called the subprime mortgage crisis, And that happened because the banks were giving out loans to people with no money down and no credit. And I remember in particular in California, there were people that came to the country illegally who were buying houses that cost over $500,000 with no money down and no credit. And because they're undocumented, they didn't even have really too much documentation. And then look what happened. They can't make the mortgage. They don't care. They didn't put any money down. They'll just move out, get foreclosed on. And it wasn't the only factor, but it was a factor, giving these subprime loans to illegals on very expensive homes. The way it works, like when I bought my house, my wife and I, we did the old-fashioned way. You put down. We had a condo that we bought. We sold the condo and made a very good profit on it, and we put all that money down on this house. So, when you put, the old rule of thumb is you need to put 20% down when you buy a home. That's the way it used to be. And the reason that is so the person has an investment in the home. They're not just going to walk away and let it be foreclosed on. In California, with the illegals, since they put no money down and we're just paying a monthly mortgage, they just leave and then just rent someplace. So, people get ticked off about that because people in this country work very hard. Now, I mentioned earlier that it's hurricane season here in Florida, no doubt about it. And, what's so important with hurricane season is to have a secure roof. If you've got a wet spot on your ceiling, you've got a leak in your roof, you want to call Tom Laporta. He covers the entire state of Florida. He's a good MAGA guy, and he'll never sell you a roof you do not need. And people ask me all the time. For a long time, people didn't ask me this. And then people started asking me, and I get this question all the time. Who would buy a roof they don't need? Well, a lot of people do. They just don't know it. Other roofers will tell you you need a new roof even if you just need a simple repair. Not Tom Laporta at Laporta Roofing. If you just need a repair, he'll do it. And I have talked to listeners that were shocked to hear that they did not need a new roof when Tom Laporta came out. And there was one listener who was with a condominium, and they had several roofers come out. They all said they need new roofs. Tom Laporta came out and said, no, you just need a repair. I talked to a listener on our MAGA cruise a few weeks back. He thought he needed a new roof, and he didn't. Tom Laporta came out, and he just needed a simple repair. Now, if you need a new roof, he'll handle that too. He works on every type of structure, residential, commercial, municipal, and even churches. Works with every type of roofing material, and he does great work. He can also handle the job of any size. If it's just one office building, one small home, or it's an HOA with over 300 units, he can handle that as well. You can find him online at laportaroofing.com, but I'm going to give you his cell phone number. Now, there's a number on his website, laportaroofing.com. That's not his cell phone number, okay? So you're going to get the owner's cell phone number. You can call or text. And Tom Laporta and I, we're friends. We text a lot. And this is the number that he and I text from pretty much every day, back and forth. Here's his number. This is Tom Laporta's direct cell phone number, 954-604-4602. 954-604-4602. Give him a call. Make sure you tell him Brian Craig sent you. All right, now this is some great news. Out of the Washington Post, the United States government is going to pay the family of Ashley Babbot nearly $5 million for her murder. And it says here, the Trump administration reversed Justice Department opposition to the wrongful death lawsuit in the case of Ashley Babbot, who was shot by police. And they say this is the left-wing Washington Post. The thing about Ashley Babbot, there's some footage that is very difficult to find. And, this morning I was talking about Kash Patel and Dan Bongino's interview on Fox News with Maria Bartiromo over the weekend. And they were talking about revealing how many, they didn't say they were going to identify them, but they were talking about how many FBI assets were at January 6th. It's kind of annoying, that interview, I must tell you. And they're getting a lot of negative feedback, Bongino and Kash Patel, from hardcore 100% MAGA people on that interview. And we all have a right to be upset with them. But anyway, those FBI assets, a lot of them are in MAGA gear, causing trouble. And the video, which I will not watch again, I saw it a couple times when it first happened, but I'm not going to watch it again ever if I can help it. If it pops up on my screen, I might see it by accident. I'll never watch it on purpose. But when Ashley Babbot was murdered by the Capitol Police officer, that footage was taken by that fake MAGA guy, the Black Lives Matter guy, who was wearing he was a BLMer, and he was wearing MAGA clothes from head to toe. And we found out he was working for a bunch of different mainstream media outlets. And he captured that video. And just a few moments before that, before she was shot dead, Ashley Babbot, by that Capitol incompetent police lieutenant, there's footage from that same video that they never show you. And just a few moments before, Ashley Babbot went to two Capitol police officers in that hallway. They were standing up against the wall, and she was begging them to stop people from moving forward down that speaker's hallway. And just moments later, she was shot dead. So Ashley Babbot was actually trying to stop what was happening, not advance down that hallway. And, that $5 million, I don't know what when a family has a loss like that and they get that settlement, I don't know how that money affects them. You understand what I mean? Because the money, you have all this money, all of a sudden you're a millionaire, and it comes to you in such a way. I imagine they don't enjoy the money, but they do it to for a point to be made. And that interview with Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, a lot of things piss people off about it, but one of the things is this: President Trump and MAGA need to have their names and reputation cleared from January 6th. And Kash Patel and Bongino, they were sent to run the FBI for several reasons, and one of them was set the historical record straight on what happened on January 6th. And it doesn't seem like they're looking to do that at all. And that's what's really ticked off a lot of people, including me. And I know a lot of you too, because we talked about this at great length, and telling us how many FBI assets were there, which means like informants. That doesn't do us a lot of good. I think we need to know who they were, and I do think we need to know how many and who the federal agents were from all of the different agencies, not just the FBI that were there. And the reason they need to be identified is not just to bring them to justice if they did illegal things. I want to find out how many of these FBI assets and people connected to the federal government were the ones that broke the windows and climbed through and were advancing and telling people to move forward. And so, do you understand what I mean? That needs to be done. And based on what we saw, it doesn't look like that's going to happen with these two guys. Now, if they come out with everything, because Kash Patel said, give us a week or two, okay. But when 2 weeks are up, people are going to start making some demands on them. And Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, if they do not deliver, and I'll ask you guys can let me know in the comments, if Kash Patel and Dan Bongino do not deliver on the promises they've made, and remember, these two guys were screaming from the top of their lungs, saying all the right things the last 4 years. If they don't deliver, do you think Bongino will be able to return to his program and the way that he was hosting it before? I don't think so. People are going to be pretty bad. We'll give them their 2 weeks, and let's see what they give us in 2 weeks. Kash Patel said a week or two. So we'll give them their 2 weeks, but after that, people are going to start to say enough. I would not be now. If they deliver, they deliver, right? If they come through with some arrests, some indictments, and such, all will be forgiven and forgotten, and we'll say, oh well, they did what they did on that interview because they had these ongoing investigations, and and such. But if they don't deliver, people are going to start talking about their resignation. People are really fed up with Pam Bondi and the Justice Department because in that interview, Bongino and Kash Patel never used the word arrest or indictment. Didn't see any of that. Talked about sending stuff to Congress and document drops. Pam Bondi was put in place. Kash Patel was made FBI director and Dan Bongino deputy director to go out and make arrests. And I told this to a caller at the end of the morning show today. You may have heard it. And I said this. I said, I thought Dan Bongino was going to be like Tom Homan at the FBI, that Kash Patel was going to be running the organization, and Dan Bongino was going to be out in the field putting handcuffs on people like Tom Homan's doing. Tom Homan didn't waste any time. Kristi Noem, she's been going out on these raids with Homan. They've arrested a lot of people. Why haven't they at the Justice Department? Yeah, I mean, these are very important questions. Let me know what you think about all these things. Now, I want to, of course, thank our Patreon supporters for their support of the program. And, if you're a Patreon supporter, not only do you get commercial-free editions of each and every podcast episode, but since I've started the video podcast, which this is the second episode of offering the podcast in video form, which on YouTube. I'm still on all the podcast platforms, and you get the audio podcast on all the podcast platforms, but the actual video podcast where you get to see the video and see me and the articles and everything on the screen, just like I do in the mornings when I'm live streaming on the radio. Now, Patreon supporters, you're getting a commercial-free video podcast, not just the audio. You're getting the video podcast version commercial-free for all Patreon supporters. And if you'd like to become a Patreon supporter, there's a link in the description of this and every episode. So our top Patreon supporters get a live on-air thank you shout-out on every episode. So the names you'll hear now are our top Patreon supporters. I want to thank Andrew and Connie, Christine, ETW, Chuck, Pamela, Nick, Wesley, Heather, David, Maria in Texas, Alice, LeeZep, Shawna, George, Brandon, John, Frank, Dale, David, Laura, Rob, and SFjr. These are our top Patreon supporters. Thank you so much. And again, if you'd like to become a Patreon supporter. There is a link in the description of this and every episode. All right, we're going to take a break. My name's Brian Craig. We'll be back right after this.
Technology is evolving faster than ever. It's shaping the way we play, connect, and innovate. Join brothers Cody and Michael on Tech and Tactile, the podcast where gaming, technology, and accessibility collide. Tech and Tactile explore the latest trends in video games, gadgets, and adaptive tech, while advocating for accessibility for all players and users, including those with disabilities. With personal stories, expert insights, and real conversations about breaking barriers, Tech and Tactile is a must-listen to for gamers, tech lovers, and anyone passionate about making digital spaces open to everyone. Don't just scroll. Press play and be a part of the movement. Listen right now on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and techandtactile.com. That's TECHNTACTILE. Add Tech and Tactile to your podcast playlist right now. To be strong and hide your pain. But what if the truth is, strength begins when you stop hiding? Author Geraldine will take you on a powerful journey through the real battles of mental health, through darkness, through hope, and into healing. In the book, You Are Not the Rain, available on Amazon. Through intimate and honest stories, the author shows how therapy, medication, and support networks can transform lives, and how empathy can change the world. You Are Not the Rain is a guide, a light, and a reminder that behind every struggle is a soul worth fighting for. You are not broken. You are not alone. You are not the rain. Available now on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and as an audiobook on Google Books, Storytel, and other online booksellers. You Are Not the Rain, from author Geraldine. Read it and help create a world where understanding wins. Are you exhausted, anxious, or stuck in survival mode? Medication, diet, supplements, no matter what you try, it doesn't change. It's not you. It's not your willpower. It's your nervous system. In the new book, The Vagus Nerve Protocol, author Adele Payne reveals simple, science-backed daily exercises to reset your system, release stress, and reclaim the energy you've been missing. Imagine this: sleeping deeply each and every night, digesting effortlessly, and breathing freely again, all by harnessing the power of your vagus nerve. The Vagus Nerve Protocol isn't another quick fix. It's real healing, designed for real people just like you. No apps, just practical steps to bring your body back to balance. Stop struggling and start thriving. Order your copy of The Vagus Nerve Protocol from author Adele Payne on Amazon and Kindle, paperback, and Kindle Unlimited. Your healing starts now. Order today. What if everything you've been through, every setback, every heartbreak, was leading you to something greater? 225 Moments with M. Nicole is the faith-driven podcast that turns trials into victories. Inspired by Joel 2:25, 225 Moments with M. Nicole is a powerful podcast that shares real stories of restoration, resilience, and breakthrough. On each episode, host M. Nicole, who's a manifestation coach and purpose-driven visionary, has conversations that ignite faith, align purpose, and unlock transformation. From surrendering to God's timing to recognizing when blessings don't look like blessings, 225 Moments with M. Nicole will uplift, empower, and awaken possibility. Are you ready to manifest the life God has for you? Then add 225 Moments with M. Nicole to your podcast playlist right now on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and all podcast platforms.
President Trump had a very long phone call with Putin today, and he posted on True Social some comments on it, which I'll go through in just a moment. And by the way, if you watch the video version of the podcast on YouTube, you can see the post from President Trump. I'm showing it on the screen. But I'm going to read through it in just a moment, guys. This Ukraine-Russian war is insane. I mean, Trump's right. It should never have started, and it wouldn't have if he was president. However, it did start. And, Biden wouldn't even talk to Putin. I've never heard in my life of a conflict like this where there were not negotiations. That may be in the Second World War, but this isn't the Second World War. During Korea and Vietnam, there were always negotiations going on. They had these Paris talks. And during the Vietnam War, they were going on for a long time, and they had peace talks during the Korean War. as well. You always want to have the phone lines open. After 9/11, even warmonger George W. Bush, he told the Taliban, give us Osama bin Laden and nothing, we won't come in. And they didn't, so we did, which is what he was counting on. He didn't want them to give over bin Laden because he wanted total war with the military-industrial complex, G.W. Bush. But, for this conflict in Ukraine, to say that you're not going to talk to Putin, that's crazy. I don't know if they still have it in the Oval Office, but remember when we were kids, they always talked about that red phone that was a direct line from the White House to the Kremlin that they put in during the Cold War. Do they still have that? They should. But here's what President Trump posted on Truth Social about the call with Putin. Just completed my 2-hour call with President Vladimir Putin of Russia. I believe it went very well. Russia and Ukraine will immediately start negotiations towards a ceasefire and, more importantly, an end to the war. The conditions for that will be negotiated between the two parties, as it can only be, because they know the details of a negotiation that nobody else would be aware of. That's right, Russia and Ukraine. And that's a big concession by Putin, because Putin does not recognize Ukraine as a sovereign country. So for him to allow discussions, that in itself is a concession, right? Lincoln didn't want to have peace talks with Jefferson Davis during the Civil War. They did send a delegation to Washington, but with their vice president and stuff. But he didn't have negotiate because they didn't recognize the Confederacy, the Democrat Confederacy, as a sovereign nation. Anyway, back to this. The tone and spirit of the conversation were excellent. If it wasn't, I would say so now rather than later. Russia wants to do large-scale trade with the United States when the catastrophic bloodbath is over, and I agree. There's a tremendous opportunity for Russia to create massive amounts of jobs and wealth. Its potential is unlimited. Likewise, Ukraine can be a great beneficiary on trade in the process of rebuilding its country. Negotiations between Russia and Ukraine will begin immediately. I have so informed President Zelensky of Ukraine, the President of the European Communion, President of France, Italy, the Chancellor of Germany, the President of Finland, during a call with me immediately after the call with President Putin. The Vatican, as represented by the Pope, has stated it would be very interested in hosting negotiations. Let the process begin. So we are in the beginning of the end of that war. That doesn't mean it's going to be over tomorrow or next week. There's a lot of things that have to be discussed and a lot of things that have to be handled and talked about. But we're finally getting to the beginning of the end of this war that is just awful. I mean, President Trump said the other day over 5,000 are dying a day in that war. For what? For nothing. Bruce Springsteen, and I don't know if I'm alone in this. You guys can let me know. I've never liked Bruce Springsteen. Everyone liked Born in the USA because, the 80s was, the decade of President Reagan, and Born in the USA was popular just because, we were proud of the USA, like we are now, right? Right, exactly. Pride in America is back. Pride in America was back in the 80s. It was morning again in America. But Bruce Springsteen, to me, has always been a no talent. I've never liked Bruce Springsteen. He always sounds like he's constipated when he sings. His song, I'm on Fire, is one of the creepiest songs I've ever heard in my life. He's singing about a guy, an adult man who's fantasizing about an underage girl asking if daddy's home. Go listen to that song. That's Bruce Springsteen. I'm on Fire is one of his big hits. It's disgusting. And Born in the USA, Mr. Woke Bruce Springsteen, he refers to Asians as the yellow man. That's not very woke, Springsteen. And, President Trump was talking over the weekend about these celebrities, and he was one that were compensated or suspected of being compensated for doing these endorsements of Kamala, which would be a campaign finance violation. And I hope that they look into that. A lot of actors and other celebrities like Bruce Springsteen were doing all these Kamala endorsements. And the actors in particular, and I was talking about this at the time during the campaign, actors are not getting residuals anymore. And residuals that they used to get from their work used to be boatloads of money. They'd make more money than their initial, sometimes what they got paid for a film or a television show. and they have a ton of credits. The money was coming in by the ship. And because of streaming, they don't get residuals anymore. So there's a lot of famous actors who are desperate for money that'll do anything for money. I'm not talking about Springsteen here. I'm talking about some of the actors. And that's why a lot of actors were taking money to endorse Kamala. But Bruce Springsteen is trashing this country and our great president and our great American people that just elected President Trump in Europe. And to do this overseas used to be for just there used to be a taboo on Americans protesting the United States and criticizing it outside of the country. Remember the Dixie Chicks during the Gulf War II with George W. Bush? They were one of the hottest acts in country music. And I think they were in England at a concert, and they were trashing the United States and President George W. Bush. And it ended up with that band breaking up. It destroyed them because people were so outraged that they were bashing us overseas. When Bill Clinton ran for president the first time, one of the big controversies for Governor Clinton was that he had protested the Vietnam War in Europe when he was over there as an Oxford Rhodes Scholar. And I don't think he was over there protesting the war. I think he was over there because he was trying to hook up with the girls at the protest. But I've seen people, even Nancy Pelosi, be in President Trump's first term, ask questions that were to be critical of Trump, and she says, "I'm not going to comment on that while I'm not in the country." But Bruce Springsteen, he's doing it. But do you think he's a no talent? I never liked him, not because of this liberal stuff. I don't like this liberal garbage. But even when he was like the top act in music, I didn't like it. This is in Breitbart. Rock star Bruce Springsteen has refused to quit his criticism of the USA under President Trump after being told to keep his mouth shut. Speaking on stage in Manchester, England, the Born in the USA singer dedicated his song to Dear Leader, a reference to Kim Jong-un, while saying a rogue government is controlling the United States. This government was just elected by the majority of those who voted. So this is not a rogue government. This is a government that is representative of the people of the United States. And I bet you Bruce Springsteen's going to take all those Trump tax cuts that are going to be made permanent with the big, beautiful bill too, right? Absolutely he will. I tell you, these people they don't even hear themselves. Sometimes some of my friends will sometimes tell me, I was talking to someone the other day, and they're pretty well-to-do business person, very well-to-do business person. So they're at the golf course, and they go to an expensive golf club, and they were talking to somebody at the golf course who's worth just millions upon millions of dollars, and they were trashing Trump. And I said, I bet he takes those Trump tax cuts. And he's like, oh, next time he does it, I'm gonna ask if that. Yeah, that'll stop them in their tracks. I know these people that bash Trump, especially Bruce Springsteen, has been, and that he's in many ways, Bruce Springsteen's really a one-hit wonder. He got lucky with Born in the USA, didn't he? I think so. Well, anyway, let me know what you think about Bruce Springsteen in the comments. Now, I want to tell you guys about Mike Lindell and MyPillow. If you'd like to support the program, one of the ways you can do that, and it's a great way, and that's to go to MyPillow.com and use our promo code Kane at checkout, Kane. And remember, when you use my promo code Kane at checkout at MyPillow.com, you're supporting all my content, the podcast, the radio show, everything I do, and it's greatly appreciated. Mike Lindell has been with us for many years, and with Father's Day here, what better gift to give Dad on his day than the gift of a great night's sleep every night for the rest of his life with these great MyPillow products. The MyPillows, huge deals. You can get the MyPillow that started it all for less than $20 with my promo code Kane at checkout. Dad will love that MyPillow. The MyPillow towel set, towels that actually work, Mike Lindell says. They're just $39.98. And they have a whole bunch of new colors that are out with my promo code Kane at checkout, by the way, for that great deal. In fact, you can save up to 80% off top MyPillow products with my promo code Kane at checkout. And every time you do, use that promo code Kane, you're supporting me, all my content, and the great Mike Lindell as well, who, because of his support for our favorite president, Donald Trump, has been kicked out of all these big stores, Walmart, Bed Bath & Beyond. They kicked him out. Look what happened. They kicked him off the QVC and all that. He used to be on QVC all the time. He's not on there anymore. And Mike Lindell has stayed in business because of your support. So it's greatly appreciated by us here on this program, as well as Mike Lindell and his staff. Thanks for using the promo code Kane at checkout. It is greatly appreciated. Well, listen, guys, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, the Brian Craig Show podcast is on all podcast platforms. If there's a podcast platform, just go to it and search the Brian Craig Show podcast. And, of course, on YouTube and YouTube Music, you get the video version of the Brian Craig Show podcast. Just look up the Brian Craig Show on all these platforms, and it'll come right up. All right, this is where MAGA comes to talk. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you next time.